We left the last chapter with a colony of heaven-planted and occupied territory, visibly different, loyal to another king, neither hiding nor blending, and ended on the question every colonist eventually asks. If we are not here to conquer the place and not here to argue everyone into submission, how does a colony like this ever actually win anyone? Jesus answered the question directly, and his answer is almost the exact reverse of how most of us try. On the last night, with everything he cared about hanging in the balance, Jesus told his friends what the watching world would use to identify them. Not their doctrine, not their numbers, not their clout, or their buildings, or their arguments. By this, he said, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. John chapter 13, verse 35. Read it slowly because it is staggering. The single piece of evidence Jesus handed the world, the test he was content to be judged by, was the quality of the love among his people, not how they argued with outsiders, how they treated each other. The colony is meant to be seen, and what the world is meant to see is a love it cannot explain, cannot manufacture, and cannot quite look away from. This cuts hard against the instinct of the made-up mind, which has only ever wanted one thing from the people it disagrees with, to win. So we reach for the megaphone. We sharpen the argument, marshal the verses, line up the proofs, and go out to win them, as though a human being could be argued into the mind of Christ the way one might be talked into a better phone plan. But one cannot. We have said it since the first page. A mind is not changed by force, and an argument is merely force wearing a tie. You cannot reason someone into a new way of seeing. You can only show them one, and pray they catch it. Jesus did not hand his friend a megaphone on the last night. He handed them a towel and washed their feet. The colony's witness is far more often the towel than the microphone, the visible, baffling, lived-out love that makes a watching person stop and wonder. This does not mean we never speak. Of course we speak, for we have a king to name and good news to tell, always with gentleness and respect. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. It means the life is what makes the words believable. Without the love, the most eloquent gospel on earth is, in Paul's blunt phrase, only a noisy gong. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1. Words explain the light. The life is the light. So, the colony shines, not by trying to be impressive, but simply by being out in the open, the strange and beautiful thing it actually is. A city set on a hill, Jesus said, cannot be hidden. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. When a community genuinely forgives, genuinely shares, genuinely loves the unlovely, and seats the wrong people at its table, it becomes visible the way a lit window is visible on a dark street. People slow down, they look, and they ask, without quite knowing why, what is that? That question is worth more than 1,001 arguments, because it is the world leaning in of its own accord. It is also why no argument, however airtight, can substitute for the thing itself. For in the end, the only adequate demonstration of the gospel is a community actually living it. But now I must correct the thing we almost always get wrong here, because it is the whole difference between a true witness and a counterfeit one. When we hear be an attractive community, we instantly picture be impressive, polished, successful, excellent, winsome, a church that looks like the best version of the world, so the world will want in. And that is precisely the wrong picture. It is merely worldly meritocracy with a cross painted on the front, and it draws a crowd the way any impressive thing draws a crowd, witnessing to nothing but itself. The attraction Jesus built was the opposite. Look again at whom he gathered. Not many wise, not many powerful, not many of noble birth, but what is foolish in the world, what is low and despised. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 to 29. The thing that arrests a watching world is not a colony of impressive people. It is a colony of unimpressive people, the overlooked, the wrecked, the rejected, visibly and inexplicably transformed. Look what God did with the likes of us. That is the beacon. And here is why it matters so much. Excellence repels, for when the world looks at impressive Christians, it hears. You could never, but grace attracts, for when the world looks at the foolish and weak and discarded, lifted and loved and made new, it hears, even you. A colony of the put together preaches a closed door. A colony of the put back together preaches an open one. This is also why the colony's strategy was never to chase a crowd. The made-up mind church measures itself the way the world measures everything, by size, reach, numbers, relevance. But Jesus did not mass broadcast. He poured himself into 12. He sent out a small band. He likened the kingdom to a pinch of leaven and a single buried seed. Matthew, chapter 13, verse 33. John, chapter 12, verse 24. Small things, potent things that quietly transform everything they touch. The bride's witness has never been the size of the gathering. It is the potency of a genuinely transformed people, however few. 100 crowd-pleased spectators change nothing. A dozen remade lives change a city. And there is exactly one way to ruin all of this, and it is the trap we are most likely to fall into, precisely because we have just been told that being seen is the point. The moment being seen becomes a performance. The moment the love becomes a strategy, the community a brand, the warmth a recruitment funnel, it is curdled instantly back into the mirror. Now, it is image management again, the self dressed up to be admired, only wearing the colony's colors. Jesus drew the line exactly. Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16. You do not aim the light. You do not point it at yourself and call it witness. You simply shine. You live the formed life out in the open. And when people are drawn in, the glory runs straight past you to the Father. The colony performing for an audience has already stopped being the colony. The colony that has forgotten an audience is even watching is the one the audience cannot stop watching. So, that is how a colony of heaven wins a world. Not by conquest, not by cleverness, not by crowds, but by a love it could never have manufactured, lived out in the open, pointing past itself to the King. But there's a cost to that kind of love, and it is the part the brochures leave out. Love like that, for the unlovely, for the enemy, for the people who could do nothing for you in return, is expensive, and a world running on made-up minds does not reward it. It crucified the only man who ever loved perfectly. And it should not surprise us that the road the bride walks to her throne runs straight through the same places did. That is where we go next.